Okay, thank you, Ulrika Modéer, for your time to have a very brief interview with us. So, my name is Arif Sulimani, and I am from Young Media Sweden. And I will ask some questions about the UNDP's works and especially your commitments in Afghanistan, what UNDP has been doing so far in Afghanistan. So, you can briefly introduce yourself, then I will begin with the questions, please.
Thank you for this opportunity. So my name is Ulrika Modéer and I'm the Assistant Secretary General of UNDP United Nations Development Programme, and we have been present in Afghanistan for decades, accompanying local communities, but also before the coup, also the government, to really be part of the international investment in a more prosperous and peaceful Afghanistan. And of course then the past years we've been looking at how to be able then to respond to the new situation. Perhaps a bit even going back to the times that we were in more than 20 years back, where we localized as the UN the response to really support the resilience, local economy, but also local services for people to be able to cope with a very difficult situation that they are facing right now in Afghanistan.
Thank you. So you answered my question before I was supposed to ask it. Thank you. So in your panel discussion, you mentioned something that Afghanistan has been extremely dependent on international aid and resources and other. Could you explain it further to give a more broad picture of this, how Afghanistan has been extremely dependent on international aid and how the development has gone through so far. If we begin with 2001, when the Taliban fell and a new regime came in Afghanistan, democratic and republic regime was in Afghanistan. So please.
So I think, of course, it was great to see at the time that the international community really wanted to invest in a more peaceful and prosperous Afghanistan. But at the same time, we would know that in order for a country to be prosperous, you really need to rely on the resilience and the ideas and the local economy and people's ability to really take on the leadership themselves. So yes, Afghanistan has been heavily dependent on foreign aid, but at the same time foreign aid has also been part of building a lot of capacity in the country. We have seen education rise to levels that we haven't seen before, 40% of girls in primary education and so on. That has of course built the basis also for the Afghan people to really lead their own future. But then, as we can tell now, the situation has really gone from a really bad situation to an even worse situation where the Afghan people are suffering a lot because of the situation that the country is in right now.
Thank you. So if we put 20 years of Afghanistan into perspective, according to UNDP, what did go wrong and what did go right when it comes to the development of Afghanistan from different perspectives, socioeconomic, even political, and even other perspectives, if you want to talk on this?
It's a broad question and you would need a lot of time and expertise to really answer that question. But I do think that it is important to see that the investments that have been made by the international community in Afghanistan the past 20 years have really led to something important, a well-educated population with a lot of aspirations. UNDP has in its network, for instance, 50,000 female-led local enterprises. That capacity that is there to actually build the local economy needs to be supported and developed. Because at the end of the day, it's only the Afghan people who can decide on the future. And yes, I think the international community has a responsibility as well to point to the principles of the UN with regards to human rights, not least, of course, the rights of girls and women in Afghanistan, the right to education for everyone. But of course also see how we can be of support to the long-term development of Afghanistan and not make Afghanistan now dependent on humanitarian assistance, because that is not the solution to the situation that the country is facing right now. We need to support the local economy and see how we can be of support upholding local services, education, health and so on, so that the people themselves can find a way forward with the support from the international community.
Thank you. So did UNDP ever experience any type of resistance from the local people, from the communities when it came to the development and other works of UNDP? Maybe some works or that the UNDP wanted to implement in Afghanistan, they did not really match or with the belief or with the ideas of the local communities, and that was a challenge or hinder for the UNDP in order to implement those activities in Afghanistan.
The UN and UNDP always tries to look for local ownership, because we believe that at the end of the day, any project that we are there to support or implement will only be sustainable if there is a local ownership. So of course then you have to listen to the local communities to see how you can develop the support in a way that makes sense to them. Afghan people, like any people of the world, of course, would have differing opinions and views. I think, UNDP and other UN entities have been struggling with high levels of corruption, rule of law that has not been functioning and so on. But we have also, and I think that this is important to say, seen a lot of development throughout the past 20 years. So the investments of the international community has also really strengthened the capacity of the Afghan people, and I think it's that capacity that we have to rely on now in these troubling times that the country is facing.
Thank you. So you also mentioned in your panel discussion that after the fall of Republic and semi-democratic Afghanistan and the Taliban took power in Afghanistan, so there has been an economic collapse. So first, if you could compare with Afghanistan right now under the rule of Taliban with the Afghanistan during the mid 1990s, that Taliban was also ruling. Do you think, based on the socioeconomic and economic perspective, is there any difference? How is the humanitarian situation if you could compare right now Afghanistan with the 20 years back Afghanistan?
There are of course similarities. So I think, from the UN perspective, we have also learned how to localize our response, to be able to see how to hold, as I said, local services, the local economy, the support that we're giving, for instance, to 2,500 female-led local enterprises that can be broadened to even 50,000 local companies led by women. But the difference, of course, is, and the risk is, that the international community does not have the patience to really engage long-term as they did at the time. And that's why we are arguing, as we did in this seminar, that the response cannot only be humanitarian support, while needed, yes, in parts of the country, but actually to see that we can build a banking system that allows people to build the local economy and build local solutions that can help them to afford the resilience, but also the hope for the future to come.
Thank you. So right now, I assume that the cooperation that UNDP used to receive from the Republic is no more can be guaranteed from the Taliban. So there are a lot of challenges and hardships. So what are the very major challenges that UNDP faces right now in order to work in Afghanistan, and how does UNDP operate in Afghanistan with the circumstances that Afghanistan is experiencing right now?
UNDP and the UN also depend on the long-term commitment by member states who can fund our activities in Afghanistan, and who realize that this still requires patience and long-term commitment. It's concerning because we know that there are many protracted crises and conflicts across the world, and Afghanistan has fallen a bit in the shadow of the media, and there is not so much attention any longer. And here's why we think it is important to say that we actually do have some ideas of what kind of responses, how we can build actually a better future through a local support in Afghanistan that upholds also many of the investments that the international community has made throughout the past years. But one major challenge is that we need a functioning banking system. The sanctions regime needs to be moderated in a way that makes it possible to do more long-term investments and not only investments in humanitarian responses. And then, of course, we are dependent to be able to function while not cooperating with the regime at the time, but still having that possibility to be functioning in Afghanistan.
Thank you. So one question which I receive daily, even this is personal to me as well somehow, is that the international aid that comes to Afghanistan, the resources and food, they are not. This is somehow the people think that they are not really going to the needy people of Afghanistan. In contrast, Taliban, they use those money and they take for themselves and they want to finance themselves in order to be stronger and stronger. So what is your comment on this?
I think it's really important to listen to people if this is the perception and really find out what is it like in reality and make sure that there is a trust by the Afghan people with regards to the investments that the international community does. So we would always listen to those complaints and concerns and make sure that we can do our very best to support the population that we are there to support, to make them resilient, strong, and for them to build a better future.
Thank you. The second last question, which is very brief. So with the changing of conflict and war, I mean with the Ukraine war, do you think that Afghanistan is really forgotten for the international community and for other countries in order to really focus on Afghanistan after the war of Ukraine?
I think that there is a risk that Afghanistan, but also other conflict-ridden countries and protected crises are forgotten. And I am concerned that we are looking for short-term solutions to very complex problems. And that's why it is important to discuss how we can shape an international cooperation to support the Afghan people in the best way to make them the owners of their own future.
Thank you. And the last question, what is your message for the people of Afghanistan, especially for the young generation, women and children, and also for the other people, I mean the Swedish society and other countries, that if they may watch this video, and how they can support UNDP to operate in Afghanistan and other countries?
Yeah. No, I just want to say that we see you, we see the capacities, the strength, the resilience that you have and the wish to build a better Afghanistan that is more prosperous and more peaceful. And we want to be of support as much as we can. But in order to be of support, we also need the support from the international community. We also depend on voluntary contributions from member states. So together, I think it's good that we can see how we can bring forward ideas how to actually move forward in a way that strengthens the Afghan people.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.